the breakdown system of how we ended up spending very, very little on this backpacking trip that was a gift as part of a graduation gift for my daughter. And my son and husband ended up coming along to do kind of just a camping trip also with us, which was nice to have an extra driver along the way. So what we ended up having to do with transportation is we had our own vehicle, so that saved us a lot of money. We didn't end up having to rent one. Now for Colorado, we did rent a vehicle, which did not cost too much money. However, it does create an added expense that is a little bit problematic. However, we saved in other areas within that trip, so it kind of probably equaled out. Now, the gas was the only thing that we had to cover for the transportation aspect, since we did have our own vehicle that we took because it was within close proximity to us. It was about a 7.5-hour trip or so, but not a whole lot of elevation gain that I was concerned about my vehicle being able to transport across that area. Food was the other item. Ways you can save on food is to go to the grocery store and get your food items. Instead of stopping at a gas station, you will get 3 to 5 times the amount of food that you will get, 3 to 5 times the amount of food you'll get at a grocery store than what you are going to get at a gas station. The other thing is planning ahead. We stopped along the way. We had a sack lunch, so for our cold items, we decided we were not going to bring those along with us. We ended up just stopping at the local grocery store about halfway through, and we ate a sack lunch, a sandwich lunch at Halsey. And then we had lunch again, or well, not lunch, we had supper then up in the Pine Ridge up in South Dakota, right across the border. So we had food for both of those things, which was great. So we had lunch and supper off of what we had gotten from the grocery store for all 4 of us. And we still had extras on top of that. So definitely go to your grocery store to get your food. And then sleep systems, we did not have a small tent, a backpacking tent. My sister had one, so she let us borrow hers. So you can borrow a tent from somebody if they're going to let you do that. And then if you want to use a tarp system like Ryan and I did in Colorado, you can do that. It's a very cheap option to go with. It's maybe not the most comfortable. You will have to have a couple tarps if you want a ground cloth underneath you, which I do recommend you should have. It's probably not going to be the greatest if you're going to go into an area that's going to have rain and thunderstorms. So I know in the mountains in the fall is not as much of a likelihood of having the thunderstorms and rain. However, in South Dakota when we went, there definitely was a thunderstorm that happened, and there was a lot of rain. So even though we had a tent, we still had some water that kind of seeped up because our ground cloth was not laid out super great, because we put that tent out in the middle of a lightning and thunderstorm very quickly, and I readjusted it a little bit later, which I was grateful for because it ended up raining all night long also. So I was glad I readjusted that when there was a little bit of a break in there. However, moving down to as far as your sleep system, we didn't carry sleeping bags. Those are very heavy unless you have a lightweight one. So you could do what we did, which was just use a down blanket. And we had another fleece blanket also, and then we just kind of snuggled up next to each other, which was not a huge thrill for my daughter. And then you could also do a wool blanket system and do kind of the burrito wrapping with that. It's a bit heavier, but thinking back on the pioneers and the old cowboys, they use that system forever and ever and ever. The old World Civil War guys and that kind of thing, they've been using wool blanket systems for their sleep systems for a long time also. So you can do it and be warm and survive, because people forever have been surviving that way. So if you want to do that, yes, you're going to have to carry a little bit of a heavier load. And so what? There's been people that have been hiking and doing backpacking trips for years that have been carrying a lot heavier supplies now. So we are definitely soft. And we have all sorts of ultralight stuff, which costs a ton of money. So it doesn't have to, backpacking doesn't have to cost that much money if you are willing to get a little bit hard and see what you can scrounge up. As far as backpacking supplies, now I did end up getting an inflatable camping pad on sale, which I love, love, love. It's very comfortable, just going from get hard to here's my soft system. So it definitely was a lot more comfortable than the foam camping pad. However, you can use a foam camping pad. It works just fine and you will survive. and it's very lightweight. So you don't have to spend a ton of money. Those camping pads from Walmart are very, very cheap. My recommendation is if you can get the foldable kind instead of the rollable kind, it's gonna give you a little bit less of a headache when you're trying to attach it to your pack later down the road. The rollable ones are just a little bit weird, and then when you unroll them, they kind of already have that curl in them. So if you can get the foldable kind, it's gonna be helpful to you later. And then there is no open fires in the Black Elk Wilderness, as a lot of areas just due to the fire risk. So make sure you have those propane, little propane pocket rockets available to you. You can get the fairly cheap kind, but if basically the metal kind, the metal attachment at the top, we have an MSR, but you can get some cheaper ones too that I've heard are just as good. And we've used it several times on camping. I've used it when our electricity went out here this last winter to make breakfast and lunch. So you can definitely use that. The other things, the costs that you're going to factor in here are your park fees if you are going to be going into Custer Park, which does cost about 20 bucks, I believe it is. And then we ended up we didn't go into the Custer, so we don't have that park fee for us. So nope. And then a fishing license, which my husband ended up getting, which was probably one of the larger expenses just because we are out of state, and we ended up doing a 3-day fishing license for him. And then my son could fish off of his license as a minor without any extra added costs. So that was probably a larger expense. Now you don't have to do that, but if you do like fishing and you want to fish, and he fished at Horse Thief because that's what they did, you can do that, and that does make that cost go down just a little bit. So that's a little bit breakdown, and overall total cost for this trip was less than $500 for everything that we have here, because we either borrowed it or got it on sale, or we found it cheaper somewhere. So these are the different options that you have, and I would say probably the biggest cost of this was gas. Gasoline was the biggest cost out of this whole thing. And then, of course, food would have been next. And then probably that fishing license was the most expensive, or the third most expensive thing. So good luck. Have fun on your backpacking trip.